Hey, Mr. Wiedemer here, Mr. Wiedemer's History. Today we're going to end the progressive era talking about Woodrow Wilson, the last progressive president. This is 6.6, Wilson's Progressivism. The objective, you guys will be able to analyze the progressive policies of Woodrow Wilson's administration. Alright, Wilson and Congress. Wilson won the 1912 election because of the split in the Republican Party between Taft and Roosevelt, which allowed Wilson to come in. Now, Wilson had no real experience in national politics. Remember, he was a professor, and so him and Congress, he's kind of a minority president. Him and Congress kind of, I don't know, not on the same tape, not on the same page all the time. But the 1912 election showed America wanted progressivism. They wanted change, and they wanted it now. And Wilson's going to be the guy who really does a lot of progressive ideas and gets a lot of this progressivism done. And he enjoyed the loyal support of most Democrats supported him on this too. So that's a good thing to have. Congress supports you. Most of your party supports you. Things are going to get done. Things are going to happen. All right, so William Jennings Bryan, notorious William Jennings Bryan, you hear his name more and more and more. He's a fixture of politics. I mean, for all the beginning of the 20th century. All right, there's old Bryan there. And Wilson wanted to do away with the evils of industrialism. Now, he said it's an excuse for waste, natural resources, human costs of unrealistic, unrestrained individualism, and use the government for private and selfish purposes. All these things were the evils of America, and he was going to stop them. He was going to get rid of these evils of America. That's what he's going to do. So he's going to have these goals of the nation here. Now, these 4 goals of the nation is what Wilson is going. Now, his goals of the nation, you're going to reform of tariffs and banking, equality of business opportunities, improvements in agriculture, and conservation of natural resources. He's going to do all of these. These are his goals he sets out in his inaugural address, and he's going to do every single one of these. He's a pretty good president. All right, first up, the Underwood tariff. Now, he's going to call a special session, first time in over 100 years to do so. All right, first president to do so. And so Wilson stated that the president's greatest power lies in focusing on public attention on important issues. Okay, if the public needs to know what's going on, and we need to do what people say. People, by the way, people did elect us. So he wanted to lower tariffs to open up foreign markets. And to much of the chagrin of the protectionists who liked the tariffs because it forced people to buy American goods, he wants to lower tariffs to open up free trade throughout the world. And so the House bills found difficulties in the Senate. The lobbyists tried to change the bill. The Senate's like, we can't have this, all these riders and earmarks added to it. It's just not going to happen. All right, so what Wilson's going to do, he's going to come to each senator's house, have a little heart-to-heart conversation with them, and pretty much make them pass this bill. And so he plays a little politics with them, goes knock on his house, has a drink with them, discuss politics in the matter. Wilson has clout, he has power, and he gets them to pass the bill. All right? And so the Senate votes to pass the bill thanks to Wilson and his, face-to-face meetings. And so the Underwood tariff represented the first substantial drop in the imports in tariffs since 1857. So it's a big deal. Tariffs are going way down so we can trade with the rest of the world and be even. All right, next up, he's going to help levy income tax. Next up. Quick review first, before we get to the next up. The nation wanted progressivism. They got it with Wilson. Goals of the nation: reform tariffs and banking, equality and business opportunity, improvements for agriculture, conservation of natural resources. Underwood tariff lowered tariffs significantly. Now, the next step, probably the most important thing of all Wilson's presidency, the Federal Reserve Act. This thing is probably the one thing that Wilson did that still impacts us today in 2013 in America. All right, this is a revision of banking and currency system, something that needed to be done a while ago, but Teddy just wouldn't get on board with it. He had other things to do, but Wilson's going to act on this, and he's going to change these policies. So we need to provide businesses with cheaper, more available credit to help the nation's banking economy so banks won't go under, the nation can be strong, and the economy with it. A strong economy equals a strong nation. So the first thing we're going to do is American banks lack stability in times of crisis. We had a panics Panic here, panic there. Banks are shut down. People lose all their money. No way to back up the banks. Okay, they not keep enough money on hand to cover all these sudden withdrawals. Something needs to change. American currency was inflexible. It based on amount of gold or silver in the Treasury, and plus the bonds held by national banks. There's no way of increasing or decreasing supply of money based on need. So inflation, deflation, and it was just the currency was very inflexible. It was a gold standard or a silver standard. Really, not much can do with that about it. That hurt the economy. 3, there was no central banking system. So every bank practiced a little differently, did a little different, interest rates, or, looked out for themselves a little bit more. And 4, too much bank was concentrated in New York City on Wall Street. Still today, Wall Street runs the financial industry of America. Right? Rural towns suffered, lacked adequate banking facilities and credit. So something need to change. All these small town banks need to come under one roof, and they're going to do that with the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, probably the most important act of all of Wilson's presidency. The Federal Reserve Act of 1913, still with us today, still alive and kicking. Little video here, check out how it works. It created a system of 12 Federal Reserve banks stationed throughout the country. 12 banks that are going to rule all the other banks. 12 banks to rule them all. And so all national banks required to join the FDIC, required to join the Federal Reserve. Here we go. The one closest to us, we got the Kansas City Federal Reserve, District 10. You see 12 districts throughout America where the banking system is going to be concentrated in. Right? So it dealt directly with banks, provided support for individual banks. It's now easier to move money from one part of the country to the other because, all the banks are together, integrated into one 12-unit Federal Reserve. Right? So banks are controlled by a Federal Reserve Board consisting of 7 members appointed by the President for 14 years now. This becomes a problem because they call it like a shadow committee, a shadow board. No one knows who's really on it. And these are unelected officials controlling the nation's economy. And so people are kind of a little leery about this because people don't have a say on who elects this. It's all the president. Maybe a little too much power for the president. And so that's the debate going on today with the Federal Reserve is, what kind of power do these 7 members have? And should they have that power? Flexible money supply, Federal Reserve notes. As you look on top of your dollar bills here, it'll say Federal Reserve note. Okay, it used to say like silver note or gold note. And so there's Federal Reserve note. It says it on top of your money. That is because of the Federal Reserve Act. Okay, the Federal Reserve note. So get some money out, look at it. Federal Reserve note. And now you know why it says Federal Reserve notes, because of the Federal Reserve Act here, 1913. So Federal Reserve notes went into circulation. Banks brought promissory notes for Reserve banks. Federal Reserve could issue more money using those notes as security. Right, thus protecting the value of the currency. It's very flexible now. Right, when notes were paid, currency was then retired. Right, and the federal banks controlled amount of money in circulation. First great test came in World War I when it assisted industrial expansion and helped finance the war effort. So yay to the... quick review of the Federal Reserve. Wilson's issued the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, created 12 Federal Reserve banks to control the finances of the country and help out the economy. Federal Reserve set the interest rates and have a hand in controlling the economy through its monetary policy. The Federal Reserve has what's called the monetary policy. They control interest rates and the amount of money in circulation. Federal Reserve, that's what they do. All right, next up, Wilson's going to regulate big business and trust. He's going to create the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, make sure businesses run the way they're supposed to run. Okay, if the business isn't doing what they're supposed to do, they're going to send a cease and desist letter that those businesses have to shut down because the Federal Trade Commission said so. So that was created in 1914. That still affects us today. Business don't run their business. If you have a business, don't run it fairly, you're going to be shut down by the FTC. And then we got Clayton Antitrust Act, forbade several practices, such as price cutting, where a large company would basically chop all their prices really cheap, take them on pop stores out of business, then they'll raise them back up later on. Kind of like what Walmart does here. They'll come into a community, have everyday low prices, really cheap. Everybody goes, Walmart buys this product. Your mom and pop local store gets shut down because they can't compete with these prices because Walmart gets large quantities, so they can sell it for cheaper, and so they run small mom and pop stores out of business, and then they could raise prices if they wanted to. So that's price cutting. That was, can't do that. Right? Trying of contracts, or purchaser of goods, one company had to agree not to trade with other competitors. Kind of like the Navigation Acts in the colonies with England, so you can only trade with us. Where, well, they're going to try to contract. Basically, if you want to contract with us, you can't work with any other company, any corporation. You're exclusive to us. You only trade with us. You only give us your goods. And you can't do that either. That's kind of monopolistic. All right? Intercorporate investments. Company bought part ownership of a rival company. Basically, now they control the whole industry this way. This is a shady way of creating a monopoly with intercorporate investments. That's a no-no under the Clayton Antitrust Act. Right? So the act forbade federal courts to issue injunctions against peaceful strikes. Basically, you cannot violate the First Amendment anymore. People were doing that. If you're striking, picketing, and protesting, if it's peaceful, under the First Amendment, you can do that. But the government was kind of trying to shut that down, so that's not good. All right, other accomplishments. Established 12 regional farm banks. All right, State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Right, Federal Highway Act. Helped farmers get their products to market. Keaton-Owen Child Labor Act. Bobby child labor. Prohibited employment of children under 14 years old. They can no longer work anywhere, especially the factories. They can no longer work anywhere. Keaton-Owen Child Labor Act. And the Adamson Act, 8-hour workday for railroad workers. They can no longer work more than 8 hours. Right? Wilson, he was a segregationist. He did not like other races. He was very, much, like a white power kind of guy. He didn't want women's suffrage, but he knew it had to happen. So he's going to pass the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote in 1920. And so, yay for Wilson for that. And his main concerns of domestic affairs until the elephant in the room appeared, which became World War I, and thrust America into world affairs and out of our domestic bubble into the global crisis known as World War I. And then after that, we stay in world affairs, and, well, we still are involved in world affairs. Lesson review. Nation 1, Progressivism, Wilson's Golden Nation, Reform, Terrorism, Banking, Equality, Business Opportunity, Improvement to Agriculture, Conservation of Natural Resources. Does all that. A newer tariff lowers tariffs significantly for free trade throughout the world. Wilson issued Federal Reserve Act, created 12 Federal Reserve banks. Federal Reserve controls the money, controls the interest rates, and they have a monetary policy. Federal Reserve monetary policy. There's also fiscal policy, which the government controls with your taxes and whatnot. So monetary, fiscal, Federal Reserve monetary policy. All right, Wilson's going to regulate trust, create the Federal Trade Commission, watch over business, Clayton Antitrust Act forbade many unethical business practices, helped farmers and railroad workers in child labor as well. Passed the 19th Amendment, give women right to vote. All right, and there you have it, progressivism. All right, Roosevelt, Taft, Wilson, 3 progressive presidents. Progressivism is all about power to the people. The people get more power. The people get more say. Government, businesses, corruption ends. We're going to bust trusts up. We're going to fix the country, make the country great again, and then World War I hits and we're off to see the world. The wonderful world it is. And we then come out of our isolationistic shell and we're involved in the world from then on, all by parts, before World War II or so, that we become very kind of isolationist again. But there you have it, progressivism in the United States. Until next time, Mr. Wiedemer here, study history.